Salisbury Museum has 3 watercolours of the cathedral of this country's greatest artist, JMW Turner. Turner was commissioned by Richard Colcore of Stourhead to do these works in the late 18th and early 19th century. Colcore was a historian, he was an antiquarian and published many books on the history and archaeology of Wiltshire. He was concerned about the work that had been done to the cathedral by an architect called James Wyatt in the late 1780s and early 1790s. Wyatt took down the chantry chapels that had been added to the back of the cathedral. He took down the separate bell tower that used to stand in the cathedral close. He made numerous alterations which were deeply controversial. There was this idea that it should take the building back to its original medieval roots, but this was not something that was accepted by everybody, and Colcore was included in this. Turner was asked to do this work because they wanted to document the building, what it looked like in the late 18th and early 19th century. So if any future changes were made to the building, there was evidence of what it looked like at the time. So as you can see here on my left, there's this watercolour here of the north porch of the cathedral, done in about 1795. It's one of the earliest in the series that he did. Over here on the left-hand side, you can just about make out some of the scaffolding here, which may allude to the work that was done earlier on by James Wyatt. This next one here shows the choir of the cathedral from 1797. What really stands out here in this amazing architectural watercolour is the stained glass window at the end there that was done by Sir Joshua Reynolds. The final one is perhaps the greatest in terms of its architectural drama. It shows the North Transept of the cathedral, looking towards the centre of the building there, with the screen that had been added by Wyatt and the organ, which had been donated, I think, by George III. Whilst Turner was reducing this work, which was done between about 1801 and 1805, he was elected to become a full academician. In fact, he signed the painting down here on one of the tombstones and added RA after his name, which you just about make out there. The watercolours obviously faded a little. So these 3 were part of a series of 8 that were done of the building, and they were displayed in the library at Stourhead. They were never copied, they were never engraved, you could only ever see them there. And they became very famous because they showed how brilliant Turner was as a young artist. He was a man who wanted to go out and make a name for himself in the world. He was deeply ambitious. These showed how brilliant he was, and so he could secure other commissions for other wealthy patrons. In fact, he worked also with William Beckford, who lived at Fonthill, not a million miles away from Stourhead later on. So, only ever seen in the library, never copied, as I've said already. So if people wanted to publish books on the history of Wiltshire, these were not available to people to use. So for example, in 1815, a man called William Dodsworth, who was the verger of Salisbury Cathedral, produced a history of the building. He worked with a local historian called Henry Hatcher to do it. He commissioned an artist, or a series of artists, including a man called Frederick Nash, to do watercolours of the building. There are 3 of them on the table here. These are all directly inspired by Turner's work. The view there of the choir is very similar to Turner's watercolour behind us. The view in the middle there is that view of the North Transept, which is very much inspired by Turner's work. And then finally we have the North Porch there again. We have a copy of Dodsworth's book here, original copy. Turn it around. There you go. There is the North Porch. That's an engraving of it taken from that watercolour. There is the choir, an engraving taken from that watercolour. And then finally we have the North Transept. This was done by William Walnuts, who was quite a well-known engraver in the early 19th century. But not only do we have this book, we have the original watercolours, we also have the copper plates, which were only donated a couple of years ago. So here we have Walnuts' original engraving. Absolutely incredible. This is a work of art in its own right. Let's compare it. So, on my right hand side, we have here the engraving in reverse, and then on the left there, the print that was made from it. You have to appreciate that when you look at this, this was a highly skilled piece of work. He would have used a burin, a tool, to actually cut away the layers of copper, different depths, and then ink had to be then pushed into that, and then it was put in a press with a piece of paper to produce the finished work of art that you see on my left-hand side. What I love is that this is 200 years old. Yet if we cleaned it up, we could still use it today to produce further versions of that view that you see on my left-hand side.